If you've switched jobs in the recent past, there's a good chance that you've got an old 401k hanging out somewhere, some way. Today, we're going to reach into the mailbag and grab a question from a listener and answer those questions about what should I do with this old 401k and what are some common pitfalls if I leave it there or if I roll it over.
Hey, it's another episode of Power Your Retirement. I'm Walter Storholt alongside certified financial planner Steve Smith, and it's a great episode today because it's another listener question, and this one comes to us from William in California. And Steve, you kind of gave us a little bit of a preview of this one. Folks who maybe wonder, is it a bad idea to leave an old 401k where it is, or what are my other options? What can I do with that thing? And so here's the question specifically from William. But before we get to that, I know that there's kind of two ways to answer this question for you in particular. There's the normal financial advisor way, and then there's the Steve Smith way.
Thanks, Walt. Yes, and I think in this segment, maybe I'll just have that that dual personality going on here, and talk about your traditional normal advisor, how they would answer this question, and then some of the very unique things that our firm does for employees that have those 401ks. And we'll save that for the end, maybe.
Okay, very good. We will kind of give you that first answer, and then we'll get into kind of the special specifics at the end. If you are an employee of a publicly traded utility, you'll definitely want to stay tuned for the end because this really applies to you specifically. So William says, I recently left a job where I had a 401k, and I keep hearing that I should probably roll it into an IRA, but I don't really know why. Are there benefits to doing this? And what happens if I just leave it where it is? So he's kind of wondering what to do about this whole thing, Steve. So let's start there. What are the main benefits of rolling a 401k into an IRA after you leave a job? That seems to be William's initial assumption of what he should do.
Thanks, Walt. One of the major things that we want to make sure that we're aware of is what we're invested in. So a lot of employees will know what that is when they leave, but when they leave, they even forget the logins to the old 401k. Like, you've got to get that back whenever you get around to thinking about it, which could be years or decades even. And what was appropriate when you left may not be appropriate going forward. So that's one of the major things that can be one of the issues, is that nobody's driving the car anymore because you're onto a new 401k and looking at that all the time because it's part of your new employer's portal. They can just get lost out there.
So we don't want something to get completely lost, obviously, right? It's not like that money's disappearing, but I guess it's possible somebody could lose track that they even have access to that 401k. Maybe if it wasn't a job you were at a very long time and it's a smaller balance, you start forgetting about it. We don't want to start planning for retirement later in life forgetting we had this balance over here.
Yeah, and also very rarely will an employee, unless they have a unique time and inclination towards this type of thing, like investments, they don't balance the two. Because you've got this over here and this 401k has this methodology or this set of investments, and the new one has this. And if you keep doing that, you might have 2 or 3 or 4 throughout a career. And when you kind of shove them all together, we wouldn't say this out front, but it kind of looks like a mess because it isn't thoughtfully done, because they're individual plans at different stages of life through your career.
So the average advisor says, okay, let's put this all into an IRA, roll it out of that 401k wrapper that it's in. Does that unlock any other benefits?
Oh, it does. Because now when you roll things together, usually there's what a traditional advisor will want to set up for someone is to make sure you've got a place for everything to land that's thoughtfully done. And then wherever you're currently at, then they give you some recommendations of what to choose potentially off of the list so that it complements what you already have invested. So that, and also with what the portfolio is there's a lot more investment choices as you roll things out of the 401k. A lot of the ones have as few as 8 options. Some of them have a little bit more, but that's very few compared to the universe of investments. That's for sure. Also, I don't want to discount that it's the ability to work with that advisor. So some of those things about, old 401ks that you don't even know how to log into in different phases of life. Maybe a younger one was fully aggressive, another one you had different cash balance pension options along with the 401k. Maybe some had Roth, some had pre-tax, some had both. So working with an advisor, you're going to make sure that that's all tuned up to be optimized for taxes, for returns, for phase of life, and your individual risk tolerance. And maybe the last one that is really hard to find unless you have software like I have is some of those hidden 401k fees, not only while you're there at the job, but also they tack on recorders fees and all different kinds of different custodian fees and different things that they tack on that the employer usually was subsidizing, they're tacking on to you.
Okay, very good. So obviously some benefits from not leaving that 401k orphaned or kind of alone with your prior employer. If someone like William decides to do that rollover, are there some tax implications that they need to watch out for?
There definitely is. And you got to be very careful when you're rolling over. So I'd recommend working with someone who knows how to do this without doing some really, really, really big mistakes. For instance, there's a way, it's called the direct transfer. We use rollover because it's more fun, but it's really a direct transfer, meaning it goes from the 401k directly into the investment account and doesn't touch your hands necessarily. At least your checking account, it doesn't touch that. They may send you the check and you've got to send that on, but you don't cash it. That's
Okay.
direct transfer. And no matter if it's a Roth type investment or it's a pre-tax type investment, you're not going to have any kind of tax implication. But so many people will try to do this themselves. They'll go online to ABC Custodian and they'll open up their own account and then they take the money out. It drops into their hands. They cash it. Also, the 401k will withhold 20% automatically when you do that. And then they'll try to put it, a few months later, they'll try to put it into like a traditional IRA. Unfortunately, can't do that. So they're stuck with the tax bill of this sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars and put them into a really high tax bracket for 1 year.
That's a pretty minor technical item, right? Like okay, just how are we going to move the money? But big implications if you do it
Huge.
incorrectly.
Especially if you live in a state like California, you're going to lose half of that. It's like, oh, I'm doing pretty good. I got 300,000 in my 401k, and you wake up 3 months later by making that one little tiny error by doing it yourself and just not knowing, because there's nobody you can call and say I'm sorry. You're just out. There's no grace from the IRS on that. You lost half of that investment, so now you've got 150,000.
Once William decides to roll over a 401k, how do you, Steve, help somebody figure out what to invest in next? That part has me curious because you're talking about going from those couple of options maybe in their existing 401k to now, if it's in an IRA, we have this universe of options.
Well, that's the really fun part of my job. It's probably the piece that I love the best because that is when I'm discovering the person, which is the risk profile that they're willing to take without panicking or getting too greedy. Those both sides of the spectrum. And also where they're at along the career line, how much they've saved to date. So we talk about, how much risk are they going to need in order to get out at, say, 60 or 62 or 5 or whatever it is that client wants. And it's just finding out where it is because we have all these financial planning questions to answer before we really get into your implication there as what do we invest in. So it's really about all of that discovery, all of that planning that will put us into, a certain profile, a risk profile, and then we go out and find the best investments for that level of risk.
Now, the assumption is that you only kind of unlock that benefit and some of the benefits that we've talked about on the episode today by rolling it to an IRA. Yeah. But my final question for you, I know, is going to take us in a little bit of a different direction. So just for a curveball, because William's question kind of stopped at the rolling over to the IRA portion, but we don't really know if William has picked up a new job. So let's say that William is now an employee of a publicly traded utility, one that you partner with and, which you work with many of the companies out there. Let's say that William was still working or now is working with a new company. Are there options for rolling that old 401k over into the new 401k, or can he do some additional options with an existing 401k? Like, what else can be unlocked under your specific programs and access?
Well, a couple of things. There's two ways we'll look at this. So, if they have, say, two of the most popular ones are like a Schwab PCRA, which what that means is that they allow an advisor like myself to work inside the 401k. So we have all of those options that are available in that traditional IRA right there inside of the 401k, and the ability to work with myself, with an advisor. Also, there is a way to go 401k to 401k, but that's usually not that necessary because they're all managed and they're all on the same screen. They're all in consolidated statements that are coming to you. So the necessity of rolling it one to another, if they both have those brokerage options to work with an advisor. So that's one thing. The other is that you could roll an unadvised 401k into the new PCRA, or you could open that IRA and have the PCRA. So that's one. It's getting a little confusing, with the self-directed brokerage account. But also, let's talk and slow it down a little bit, because this is what happens more times than not to our audience that's listening out there, is that they work for this utility, say in Nevada, and they decide to move to another one right over the state line, or they get a great opportunity in, say, California or Arizona or something like that. And all of these companies have these brokerage accounts that advisors can work in. There's really no need to transfer that or roll that over, because we're going to support both sides and it all goes into the same retirement plan. So most just leave it there, because let's just be honest, it's a stressful time, whether you chose to leave or you were asked to leave, or you're in a bad situation with a supervisor, or whatever the reason is that the transition is coming, that there's enough stress by moving your household and getting a new job, learning new people, learning new practices. You don't want the stress of having to move that 401k. So most utilities, when they go from utility to utility, we can manage both sides of it without having to move it. Now, at some point before they retire, we'll have to consolidate, but that's usually decades down the road.
Okay, excellent. That's really helpful, Steve. Thank you for that info. Really good question from William, and we gave you a little bit of a bonus direction there as well. So if you're kind of wondering, how do I get the most out of this 401k? How can I power it up? Well, that's the Power Up Your 401k toolkit and book that Steve provides for viewers and listeners of the podcast. So if you are a power company employee, this is the show for you, and the toolkit is also for you. You can go to powerupyour401k.com and order the toolkit. And that's going to come with Steve's book, Power Up Your 401k, a #1 bestseller on Amazon. Check that out. It's going to give you a great starting point for thinking about retirement, thinking about financial planning, and unlocking some of these really cool things that are specific to the industry. Other employees don't get access to these kinds of benefits. So this is pretty cool, and what a neat relationship that Steve has been able to create with these companies to provide this level of service. So check it out. We've got links in the description of today's show for ways that you can get in touch with Steve, how to get that free toolkit, and more. Steve, thanks for answering this question, and we'll see you next week.
You're welcome. Thanks, Walt. Thanks for all you listening.
This podcast is provided by Powerhouse Financial Advisors, an independent firm with advisory services offered through Parson X Advisory Services, Inc., PAS, a federally registered investment advisor. The information provided is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered as personalized investment advice. PAS does not guarantee the accuracy, completeness, or suitability of this information for your specific circumstances. Investment decisions should be based on an individual's goals, time horizon, and risk tolerance. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and all investments carry a degree of risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any case studies, testimonials, or endorsements shared in this podcast are illustrative of individual experiences and may not be representative of the experience of all clients. They do not guarantee future performance or success. You should not infer any level of assurance regarding future financial outcomes. Listeners should consult with a qualified financial, tax, or legal professional before making any investment decisions. Parson X Advisory Services, Inc. does not provide tax or legal advice. Be sure to consult with your tax and legal professionals regarding your specific circumstances. For a copy of our Form ADV Part 2A, which provides additional information about PAS, including our advisory fees and services, please visit powerhousefinancialadvisors.com.